You know, when people look at me, they always assume the same. Think she must be broke, and honestly, I don't blame them. I drive a 12-year-old Prius I wear. The same gray blazer to half the events I attend. And I live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Chicago that I actually own but never mention. I don't flaunt designer labels. I don't post photos from private islands, and when friends splurge on $20 cocktails, I just shake my head and say, I'll pass, and all of that is by design. You see, I was raised in a family where money never screamed, it whispered. My parents came from old, quiet wealth, the kind of wealth that moves silently through generations. Investment funds, real estate, portfolios that stretch across continents, power that never needs to announce itself. My father always said real wealth doesn't shout, it doesn't need to, it just watches. Who does? So we learned to blend in. Deliberately, despite having trust funds, my sisters and I went to public schools. We shared a single car. We took jobs instead of allowances. And while classmates were bragging about spring breaks in the Bahamas, I was volunteering at a local design firm. Just to learn how a commercial lease worked. By 24, I was managing a chain of boutique retail spaces across Chicago. I knew every tenant by name, every ceiling vent by condition. While my friends complained about rent, I was quietly collecting their landlord's checks. Then one day I met Garrett. We were high school seniors. Sitting for the SATs, I was rereading the essay prompt when a blur rushed past me. Into the hallway, a little boy was crying, and Garrett, in his pressed jacket, polished shoes, and perfect posture, dropped everything to help him find his mom. No show, no photos, no story, just kindness, and that stuck. 3 days later, he asked for my number, and I said yes. Over the next 8 years, we dated through college, jobs, breakups, reconciliations, all of it. I grew my business. He went into development, eventually joining his parents' luxury hospitality empire, and that's where the complications began. Fiona and Curtis. His parents were textbook. Legacy Image Country Club memberships, a lake house, a Range Rover for every mood they talked about. Money the way people talk about the weather, casually, but always with the assumption that you share their climate. The first time Garrett brought me to dinner at their house in Wetka, I wore a simple navy sheath dress and ballet flats. Fiona greeted me the way someone greets the caterer. Oh, Courtney, was it? How charming. Garrett mentioned you were in retail. I smiled politely. I manage commercial leasing mostly. Downtown boutiques. Fiona gave me that thin, fixed smile women wear when they've already made up their minds. How industrious of you, Curtis. Isn't that adorable? Curtis barely looked up, nodded, offered me wine, then turned back to the fireplace. The rest of the evening was filled with little knives hidden in compliments. Fiona asked if my parents did anything creative or if I was the first professional in the family. I bit my tongue so hard it hurt on the way home. Garrett apologized. She does this with everyone. Don't take it personally. I said nothing, staring out the window, but the truth was I did take it personally. And over time, the digs only got sharper. She'd look at my handbag and say, oh, that's unique. Is it vintage or just loved? Or she'd smile thinly and tell me, you make affordable look elevated. You really do. And every time I visited, she made sure to mention someone else more appropriate. For Garrett, an ambassador's daughter, a former Miss Illinois, a vineyard heiress. She once even said during brunch, loud enough for the server to hear, Courtney reminds me of the staff at our Aspen Lodge. So attentive, so grounded, I excused myself and went to the restroom. Garrett followed 5 minutes later, helpless. Say the word, he whispered. We don't have to keep coming here. I wanted to say it, but I didn't, because a part of me wanted to see how far they'd go, what they'd do when they finally saw who I really was. By year 5, I got the invitation. Fiona and Curtis were hosting a formal garden dinner. Investors, business partners, family, the whole inner circle. Garrett insisted I come. It's not a trap, he promised. I want people to see you, so I went. I chose black, sleek, elegant, under the radar. My hair simple, my makeup soft. I carried a small clutch I'd owned since college. When I arrived, Fiona looked me over from head to toe, her eyes scanning like a scanner at an airport. Oh, you're early, she said. Lovely. Garrett, sweetheart. Make sure she's seated on the east side. That's where the shade is. I smiled politely, but when I saw the seating chart, my heart tightened. I was placed between the florist and someone's ex-nanny. That was the point, to make sure I was background Noise during dessert. Fiona leaned forward, her voice dripping with honey. You've been with Garrett for years, haven't you? I hope you're not. Waiting for a proposal, I stared. At her excuse me, she tilted her head. Some girls wait too long, and then the better offers stop coming, and some families, well, they expect more than just ambition. My throat went dry, my hands clenched under the table. That night I went home, alone, no fight, no breakup, just silence. I buried myself in work, opened a third location, cut off social events, ignored Garrett's calls for weeks, until one day he showed up at my office. No driver, no tie, just him, hands in his pockets, eyes raw. I'm done, he said. I told them, we're getting married. I don't care if they come. I only care if you say yes. I didn't answer right away. I took him for coffee. We walked along the lake. He talked about starting fresh, a wedding with no drama, just us. And eventually my walls cracked. I said yes. We booked a sleek rooftop venue at one of the hotels, owned by his family's chain, 80 guests. New Private Garrett promised he'd handle everything, but he didn't tell Fiona or Curtis. The invitations went out 3 weeks before the date. The first reply was a text from Fiona. One line, is this some kind of joke then? The phone call, how dare you host a wedding in one of our hotels? Without asking, you've disgraced this family. Garrett stood firm. You're invited. Or not, your choice. If she shows up in a white dress on my property, I'll have security escort her out. She snapped. I watched him hang up. Then I opened my planner, flipped to the wedding date, and circled it with a red pen. That's fine, I said. I won't be walking in. I'll be flying. The morning of our wedding was too quiet, almost suspiciously quiet. Garrett was already at the hotel, pacing in his suit, checking his phone every 10 minutes. I hadn't answered his last text yet. He didn't know where I was, and that was part of the plan. Across the city, I stood on a rooftop helipad in River North, the sun glinting off glass towers. Around me, my dress wasn't just a dress. It was a custom piece from a designer with a 2-year wait list. No diamonds, no rhinestones, just clean lines, pure elegance. My hair pulled back into a low knot, makeup soft, natural. Beside me stood my father, steady. Calm, you ready for this? He asked. Been ready for 10 years, I said. The blades roared to life, wind whipping around us as the helicopter lifted over the city. My heart beat in rhythm with the thup-thwop of the blades. I didn't look down. I looked forward toward the skyline, where my venue perched like a crown on glass and steel. Do they even know who you are yet? My father asked. I shook my head. Not yet, but they're about to at the hotel. Fiona was fuming, heels clicking against marble. She's an hour late, she hissed. This is exactly what I expected from someone like her. Curtis sighed. You don't know. She's not coming. Oh, I know girls like her don't face confrontation. She probably crawled back to whatever hole she came from. I told you she wouldn't go through with it. Garrett stood near the altar, jaw tight, adjusting his tie again, and again his groomsmen tried to distract him, but his eyes kept darting to the double doors waiting. The rooftop shimmered under soft lights. Guests sipped champagne, murmuring, restless, and then it began. Not footsteps, not music, but a sound from above. The low, heavy thump-thop of a helicopter. Guests looked up, gasping. One pointed. Fiona froze mid-sentence. The helicopter descended over the rooftop, sending petals, place cards, even an arch. Scattering. Security moved forward, but Garrett lifted a hand. She's here. The doors opened. My veil billowed out like a banner. I stepped onto the rooftop slowly, every head turning, every jaw dropping. My father followed after me, composed, solid. The staff already knew the plan. We'd rehearsed it with the hotel GM, who happened to owe my father more than one favor. Fiona's face drained of color. Curtis dropped his champagne flute, and then they saw it, the detail no one could miss, stitched into the edge of my cathedral-length veil in shimmering silver thread, the logo of one of the largest real estate equity firms in the world, the firm that owned a silent controlling stake in their hotel chain, the firm where my father was the majority shareholder. Fiona stumbled forward. Courtney, what is this? You didn't tell us. You, my father, stepped between us, calm, steady. You must be Fiona. I'm the man who kept your Midtown expansion from collapsing. Last quarter. You're welcome, Fiona stammered. I didn't realize we never intended. Oh, you intended plenty, I said coolly. You just never thought To ask who I was, you were too busy looking down to see who was already above you. Curtis tried to recover, reaching for my father's hand. This is an honor, sir, perhaps. We can have a conversation. My father smiled. Not today. I'm here for one reason, to walk my daughter down the aisle. Garrett's eyes were wet as I crossed the rooftop. Toward him, my father's words to him were simple. When you thought she had nothing, you treated her right. Don't ever forget that. And then finally, the vows began. The vows were short, but they cut deep. Garrett's voice shook, but he never looked away from me. He promised patience, respect, and a love that no one could rewrite or diminish. I promised to never let pride or fear come between us again. When the words were sealed with a kiss, the rooftop erupted in applause. The helicopter still thrummed in the distance, a soundtrack of victory. Fiona and Curtis clapped stiffly as though their hands were made of stone, their eyes darting from my father to the embroidered veil to the investors seated in the second row, investors who now knew exactly where the real power rested. After the ceremony, my father slipped out quietly. He didn't need credit. He'd made his point. Fiona approached me near the champagne tower. Her smile stretched too tight. Congratulations, she said. You certainly know how to make an entrance. I tilted my head, I learned from the best. She tried to laugh, but the sound cracked when my father's head of acquisitions stepped forward, whispered something in her ear, and handed her a folder. She opened it, and her face blanched. A restructured board, a shift in shares, effective immediately. Her controlling voice had been reduced to advisory capacity. Curtis swore under his breath. What is this? I answered for him. Accountability, the kind you thought you'd never face that night. Garrett and I slipped away while the city glittered below us. Our reception turned into a celebration, not of wealth or status, but of survival and truth. By morning, the headlines were everywhere: helicopter bride, heir to equity empire. Mary's hotel magnate. Whispers of Fiona's demotion spread faster than the photos. Investors demanded stability, which meant honoring the new balance of power. Fiona called me 3 days later, her voice tight. I need to see you. It's urgent. Meet me at the gallery. The same gallery where years ago she'd tried to erase me. I went alone, dressed simply, no entourage, no father, no Garrett. Just me. When I arrived, she was pacing, her hair undone, makeup faded. She looked older, smaller, stripped of her armor. You've ruined me, she snapped. No, Fiona, you ruined yourself. You spent years underestimating people who didn't fit your mold. She shook her head. You don't understand. Everything I did was for appearances. It was survival in my world. And look where it got you. I said survival built on cruelty isn't survival. It's rot. Her eyes watered for a second, raw, real, but the wall slammed back up. Enjoy your little victory, she said. It won't last. People like you never stay on top. Maybe I smiled, or maybe I didn't, but I walked away without answering, because some battles don't need words. Months later, Garrett and I traveled, opened new branches, new projects. We lived not as shadows under Fiona's gaze, but as equals in a life we chose for ourselves. One evening, Garrett asked me if I ever regretted not revealing who I was sooner. I thought of the years of insults, the dinners, the whispers, the endless tests. No, I said, if I had told them back then, I never would have known who truly saw me for me. I glanced at him and he smiled, and that's the truth in the end. The veil wasn't just fabric, it was proof. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people believe you're invisible until the moment you decide they'll never look through you again.